Good morning, Canyons. How are you guys? Great, okay. We're like, okay, what is a red flag? Well, if you've ever been talking to somebody and you see some warning signs, and later in the relationship, things just go south quickly, the red flag would have been that warning sign that made you say, I should have seen this coming. Or a green flag, no, that's actually something that's really good. Okay, so let's get ourselves started. Number one, everybody ready? Everybody had their flags? Good to go? Okay, number one, they say, I love you on the second date. All right. Okay. He washes himself with a 3-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, and body wash. The room is mixed. Okay. Their email address ends with @hotmail.com. They will only eat pizza with a fork and a knife. For some of you, I think it's a little bit more telling about yourself. All right. They eat a Kit Kat like this. I don't know why I'm taking this personally. All right. They make it a point to talk about cryptocurrency within the first 10 minutes of the date. Okay. They back into every parking spot. They will sing the instrumental guitar solos in a song. Okay? This is a good one. Their lock screen is a picture of themselves. Okay. This one I think is actually going to tell us more about each other than we want to know. They prefer cats to dogs. Yeah. All right, well, so today, this is what our red flag is. It is the relationship version of purgatory. So where you're definitely more than friends because, friends don't look at each other that way, but you're certainly not a couple. You go on dates, might even hook up, you text all day, but the moment somebody asks the question, hey, what are we? The other person looks at you like you're asking them to donate a kidney, right? That you're like, why do we have to put labels on this? Why can't we just be? It's the refusal to define the terms. This, my friends, is what the kids would call a situationship. Do the kids call it that still? Okay, all right, good. So they still call it that. So what this is, it's having a subscription to their life, but they can cancel at any time. And see, the red flag of the situationship is a lot like another red flag in our culture that maybe you don't quite recognize as one, but I certainly do. It's called the subscription economy, right? Guys, it used to be that if you wanted to get an app on your phone, you would go to the app store and you'd pay 99 cents, or for a really good app, like $10, but then you would own it. You would have it forever. Now, every app that we have says what? It's free with some in-app purchases required, and the in-app purchases are like $20 a month. I don't know about you, there's some movies I want to watch, but I don't want to pay $8.99 a month to watch it on Paramount Plus with ads, or $13.99 to watch it without them. And it's maddening because you don't own anything anymore. In fact, there's this quote that's been going around for the last several years that says, in the future, you're going to own nothing and you're going to love it. And we're in the future, and I'm just not sure if I do. I did a little bit of research, and here are some of the more ridiculous subscriptions that people have been trying to force upon us. In all fairness, BMW backed away from this, but BMW for a while was trying to get you to pay $18 a month to use the heated seats in the car you just bought. Have you heard of this? Okay, imagine you are freezing your tail off because you forgot to update your credit card, okay? There's another company that what they do is they sell a vest that you wear when you're riding a motorcycle that if you were to crash, it inflates, like an airbag vest. But you have to pay $12 a month for it. So the algorithm to detect the crash requires you to make sure that your card is constantly current. And some good news, though, Taco Bell has a monthly subscription to what they call the Taco Lovers Pass. My only concern with it is I think $10 a month is too little for what that's going to actually do to the rest of your body. But in some darker news, Hewlett-Packard has a printer that charges you every single month for your ink. And if you cancel your subscription, they will remotely turn off your printer. Like you just cannot use it any longer. But here's the thing, subscriptions are going nowhere. And the reason why they're going nowhere is because generally people like it. And the reason why is because we want maximum access with minimum responsibility. It's the reason why you don't own movies anymore. You just license them through Netflix or Amazon or through, Disney Plus. It's the reason why you don't own any music anymore. You just get whatever Spotify or all the other streaming services give you. But the problem is that we've taken the same concept of maximum access, minimum responsibility, and we've applied it to people. So let me describe a marriage to you, and you just tell me, you don't have to verbally tell me, but you just tell me if you know a couple like this. We do not fight. We have never contacted divorce lawyers. We never have any intention to contact divorce lawyers. That, frankly, divorce is expensive and it is messy. Plus, it's really bad for the kids. We share an address, we share a room, we share a family, but that's about it. We live different social lives. We never do anything together. We keep separate accounts, and we might buy each other gifts for Christmas or for our birthdays, but they're not really heartfelt. And I'm going to pay my half of the bills, you pay yours, where I want access to this home, but I'm going to unsubscribe from any of your emotional needs. I mean, have you ever met a couple like this where it's like, it is the marriage equivalent of a situationship. It is a roommate marriage. For my single friends in the room, you know exactly what a situationship is. It's defined by its ambiguity of, man, what are we? Well, I don't know. What do you want it to be? It is the ultimate subscription relationship. You want maximum access to their heart. You want minimum responsibility for their future. So how does this red flag actually happen? I don't think we end up here because we are confused. I think we convince ourselves that this kind of situationship works because it provides safety. Because the world tells you that a relationship is a contract. And the way a contract works is you provide some services, you provide your part, and I'll provide mine. But as soon as things stop working, then I can cancel the deal. And so basically, as long as you're making me happy, I will stay. And then when it goes south, it gives me a chance to get out. And let's just be real. It's a lot easier to back out of a relationship if it never really was a relationship to begin with. But the thing is, as we talked about last week, and as we will reaffirm today, a Christian marriage is not a contract, it is a covenant. And there's a massive difference between the two. See, a contract, once again, is based on performance, right? As long as you make me happy, I will stay. A covenant is based on commitment. Let's pretend that you have a brother, and your brother made it in life, okay? Like he started a business and it blew up in the best way possible. Not that you're asking, but he develops this thing that where your phone listens to your conversations and it pushes personalized ads to you. Huge business, right? So he made a ton of money, but then unexpectedly he dies. And so you get contacted by his estate and they tell you that you are the steward and the trustee of his entire estate. That you get the mansion, you get the Ferrari, you get the YouTube's premium subscription, right? There are no ads any longer. You get that. But there's a catch. Your brother had a 12-year-old son. And the terms of the trust, the terms of the will say that you get to manage everything. Everything is yours until your nephew turns 25 if he satisfies a few requirements. And these are big ifs. That he needs to graduate from college, He needs to spend a year doing an unpaid internship, and he needs to hold down a solid job for a couple years. That is the requirements. Now, the reason why this is a big if is because he just lost his dad at 12 years old. He's got some emotional needs that he's largely rudderless. And the thing is, as your nephew moves into your home, you start realizing that he's getting into trouble, like there's some real issues. And so you go and you see a counselor. And the counselor tells you, hope is not lost. That there's a really high likelihood that if you really work the steps, if you go through the counseling, if you apply yourself, if you love with an unconditional love towards your nephew, it's highly likely that as he gets older, he will adjust, he will go through college, he will do that internship, he will keep that job for a couple years. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, if he doesn't do these things, everything is mine. And you're left with this decision, do I do what's best for my nephew, or do I do what's best for me? And all it takes is a little sabotage. I know this sounds like a ridiculous premise, but read this with me and we'll explain the connection. It says in Genesis chapter 38, it says, about this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. And there he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. And when he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. And he named the boy Getting kind of lazy on that name, right? All right, verse 4. Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Onan. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. At the time of Shelah's birth, they were living in Kezib. Now, in the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son, to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. We will not talk about that today, but, interesting fact. All right, verse 8. Then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, go and marry Tamar, as our law requires, of the brother of a man who died. You must produce an heir for your brother. I know this is kind of weird for us, but this was a very common practice in the ancient world. This is actually called a levirate marriage, which is just a fancy way of saying your brother's got to marry the widow. And so the idea is if your brother dies and he has no kids, you, as the younger brother, has to marry the widow of the brother. And the idea is that you do this to produce a child with your sister-in-law. And this is very significant. See, like in the world that Judah is living in at this time, the world that Onan and is living in, if you are the oldest brother, that's significant. It's highly significant. In fact, you are entitled to a double portion of the inheritance upon your father's death. So the way it would work is Judah has 3 kids. So they're not splitting all 3 shares equally. The oldest brother gets a double share. So you have to add 1. So you split it now into 4, which means that was entitled to 50% of the estate. And Onan would have been entitled to 25% of the estate to share with his brother Shelah. But now that has died, now it's no longer, hey, I'm splitting this where I'm only getting a quarter of everything that my dad has produced. Now I am getting 66%, right? Because it's 2 plus 1, split it into 3, he gets 2/3 of it. So he went from, I'm only getting 25% of everything that my father is going to leave me, to I'm now going to get a 66% share. But the if is Tamar never gets pregnant. Because as soon as Tamar has a son, that son suddenly takes the place of his older brother in the line, to where he gets the full entitled share of the inheritance that would have been granted to his father. Everybody tracking with me right now? Okay, so the whole scenario of your brother has died and man, I get to keep all this if my loser nephew doesn't amount to anything. Like this is the same position that Onan is in. When this happens, here's what Onan does. It says in verse 9, but Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. Which kind of makes sense, right? Like, hey, he gets a lot more if he just stops. But here's the big problem. For Tamar, this would have been an awful situation. See, beyond just a biological bonding of, man, I really want kids, To have a child, especially a male child, would be highly significant to a woman because when your husband dies, who is going to take care of you? It's not going to be the government. In this day and age, women had no rights. They didn't have a way to make a living. You were entirely dependent on baby Billy growing up and being able to take care of you in his midlife, in his old age, while you are also still living. And so for Onan to refuse to have a child with Tamar is cursing her to a life of destitution. And here's where we see Onan become the patron saint of the situationship. Let's read verse 9 again. But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. What's Onan doing? He's sleeping with Tamar, but he's guaranteeing that she's not going to get pregnant. Why does he do this? Well, he wants this moment of intimacy. He's like, sex is great. I want this. And from his point of view, it's like, I've got a woman who is eager to have a child. So I know that she's ready. And if she doesn't have a child, then that's great news for me because I get all this extra stuff. And so what he's doing is he is wanting this moment, but he is refusing the future of responsibility. I want all the benefits. I want maximum access, but I don't want any of the responsibility. That's what I want. Now, let me just take a time out real quick. Because if I'm you and I'm sitting and I'm working through but Matt, hey, let's talk about this. Here's the thing, and let me talk to the single people in the room for a minute. I know it's really easy to just kind of look back and say, well, hey, this is not like that at all. I'm not trying to cheat somebody out of their future. I just want to have some fun. And I understand that. But let me teach you a principle. Intimacy always wants more. It does. It always wants more. And I think you know this is true. Just think back on your life. The first time that you got her to say hi to you and you started texting each other regularly, it was awesome. Until it wasn't enough, right? And then the first time that you guys are hanging out and you reach over and you grab her hand, it was awesome. Until it just wasn't enough. And the very first time that you were saying goodnight and you lean over and you give her that small peck on the cheek, it was awesome. Until it wasn't enough. And that first time that you actually kissed, enough to know what she had to eat that day, right? It was awesome. Until it wasn't enough. And the reason why is because intimacy always wants more. And the thing is, you might be thinking, well, yeah, but it's not that big of a deal for me because I don't feel that much attachment to the other person. But let me tell you, intimacy always wants more. And even if you're at a place where man, my heart doesn't actually want to connect with this person beyond this moment, you don't know what hurricane of emotions are going through the other person because intimacy always wants more. And because oneness always bonds, as we talked about last week, that whenever there's intimacy, it merges people together, that when you split it apart, you don't know what even effect you're having on the other person. And some of you have to admit, it might be reckless to the other person to give them the illusion that you want to stay together and that there is a commitment that is there that frankly, you just don't feel. And for my married people, taking the perks of the house and the partnership within marriage while withholding your own heart from the other person. You are also a lot like Onan. That you want access without responsibility. And it's something. It is a situationship, but it's not a covenant. So how does God feel about middle ground, right? Where there's just not quite a commitment one way or the other. And now it's time for me to teach you the theology of ick, okay? So in the first century, there was a city by the name of Laodicea, and it was an economic powerhouse. It was one of the banking centers of its day, and it was really a great city, except it didn't have any fresh water. But that's not a problem for the Romans because the Romans were experts at building aqueducts where they could bring water from other parts of their empire to places that needed it. And so for the city of Laodicea, they built two aqueducts. They built one from the region of the Hierapolis that brought water from the hot springs. And so this type of water that people would soak their bodies in to try and heal just the abuse from hard manual labor, they bring that from Hierapolis, and then they bring the cool, refreshing waters from the region of Colossae. And so, of course, cold water is awesome. It hydrates, it's refreshing, it's great. But the problem was, as the water would travel along these aqueducts through the valleys in the hot sun, it was no longer cool and refreshing, it was lukewarm. And it was no longer hot like the hot springs. It cooled up and it became lukewarm. And it was full with sulfur, it was full of minerals. And then if you ever tried to drink this water, it would actually initiate a gag reflex that you would want to just throw up. It tasted awful. And so this passage that I'm about to read you, I just want to be very clear. It's not exclusively about relationships like in a romantic sense. In fact, that's not what it's about at all. It's actually about God's relationship with people and specifically the relationship with the Laodiceans. But I think it gives us insight into how God views this aimless, purposelessness, middle ground that situationships live in. So this is what Jesus says to the church in Laodicea in Revelation chapter 3. He says, I know all the things you do, that you are neither hot nor cold. You're not like the hot waters from the Hierapolis. You're not like the cold waters from Colossae. I wish that you were one or the other. But since you are lukewarm water, neither hot nor cold, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. Or another way to understand this, and maybe your translation that you're reading would say this, I'm going to throw you up. Right? Like it's the theology of ick. It makes me sick. And here's what he's saying. Hot water, it has a purpose. Cold water, it has a purpose. The lukewarm water is just gross. And the reason why it's just gross is it has no purpose at all. And he's telling the Laodiceans, you are not one of these things. That your environment and the culture around you have taken away your purpose. It has taken away just what your calling actually is. And what you're left with is the ick. It's a middle, useless sludge that just causes a gag reflex and that makes you want to throw up. And here's the thing, ambiguity. It makes God sick because it is selfishness just trying to disguise itself as safety. You think, this will make my life easier. But ultimately what it's doing is it's creating the environment where this is going nowhere. And so for those who are unwilling to commit to a direction, and maybe you're a single person, unwilling to actually commit to the person that you are leading along. Or maybe you're a married person who has gotten somebody like hook, line, and sinker, that the ring is on if they're not going anywhere, but you're trying to create some distance and close yourself off to them. To withhold clarity is to withhold love. And that is a pretty drastic thing to do. Because the other person on the other side of the relationship is desperately wants this, and you are leading them to believe that you're trying to extend it. But to withhold any clarity is to withhold love. And if you're just curious, what happens to Onan in the story, God actually sees this level of selfishness, and just like he did to his older brother he kills him too. All right, so what is the cure to this? How do we stop the nausea of the situationship? See, as followers of Jesus, we are not called to be ambiguous and directionlessness. That we are not in a contract with other people. That if you are married, you are in a covenant. So here's our motivation. If Onan is the patron saint of the situationship, Jesus is the antithesis. That Onan withheld, but Jesus gave. And so rather than just talking about all the ways that we can screw this up, let's look at the way that we actually live this out. One of the best passages in all the Bible about the direction that our relationship should go, and especially how it culminates in covenant marriage, is Ephesians chapter 5, which is in the New Testament. It's one of the letters written to the church in Ephesus by the early church leader, by a guy by the name of Paul. And this is God's desire for a Christian covenant marriage. It says in verse 25, for husbands, this means love your wives, just as Christ loved the church. And how did he love the church? Well, it says he gave up his life for her. And he does this to make her holy and clean. washed by the cleansing of God's word. He did this to present her to himself as a glorious church without a spot or a wrinkle or any other blemish. Instead, she will be holy and without fault. Do you just see the contrast for a second? Onan withheld because he's trying to protect his estate. He's asking, like, what's in this for me? That the cost of giving this woman a child, it is too much, that I'm going to lose like nearly half of what I am entitled to. But the contrast is that Jesus literally gave up his life for his bride. He gives up everything. He spills his blood. See, God's definition of a healthy relationship isn't one where you fight for your rights and like, hey, well, what's in this for me? It's one where you give them up for the sake of the other person. And next week, we're actually going to talk about how this actually works and how I think that one of the greatest gifts that God gives us for our holiness and for becoming more like Jesus, and honestly, your satisfaction and fulfillment in life is actually living this out, especially within a marriage relationship. But God is giving you this picture. The way that Christ died for his church is the way that we should approach our spouse. And just notice the plan for a second, that Jesus had a trajectory for his bride, which is the church, that he says, I'm going to sanctify her, I want to make her holy and without blemish. And what he does is he has a place where he wants this relationship to go. He doesn't do situationships, that Jesus makes it very clear. I'm not leaving you, I'm not forsaking you, I'm not seeing if like you measure up to this idea that I would have for you. He says, no, I love you even in spite of the fact that you are not perfect, that you are not great, and I'm gonna lead you to be who I've always believed that you could become. He dies as sanctifier. He isn't using us for the moment, he's building us for eternity. That Jesus defines the relationship. He doesn't leave you guessing. He doesn't unsubscribe because you're not meeting his needs. And this is how we are called to love. True love has a trajectory. It knows where it's going. So, for my single people in the room, if your relationship has no trajectory, it's probably not love, it's probably just a subscription. And I would just encourage you, cancel it if that's the case. See, dating is transportation, it's not a destination. I don't know if you guys have to fly very often, but there's a lot of airports around the country and around the world, for that matter, where you have a lot of terminals, and when the terminals are not right next to each other and there's a ton of them and you have to move from one terminal to the next, what do you get on? You get on the tram, right? Like if you're at DFW or at Denver or Chicago, like you get on a tram because it's gonna take you from one terminal to the next. And the thing is, like, the tram exists not to be the destination. The tram exists to take you from the terminal to your gate. And that's what dating is supposed to be. Dating is supposed to be the tram that takes you to the gate, the destination of marriage. That doesn't mean that you have to marry everybody that you date. No, it's almost like you're seeing, is this the right fit? Do we both love Jesus? Is this person's character the right person for me? Like there's all sorts of things. But if you get stuck in this endless cycle of, what are we? I don't know. Should we define this? I don't know. Do you see yourself marrying? Absolutely not. But you've been together for 3 or 4 years? Man, you need to ask yourself, is this taking me somewhere, or am I just riding the tram in circles around the airport? If you're in a murky relationship, you might just schedule that DTR of like, hey, we got to define what this is. And if they won't define the future, like if you have this conversation, I'm not talking like on date 2 or date 3, I'm just saying like there's something there, you feel it, you see it. If they're not willing to commit, I just want to encourage you, don't stay in that relationship too long, because true love has a trajectory. For my married people in the room, you are not roommates. You are one flesh. And I don't know, maybe you're in the room right now and you're thinking, yeah, I'm married, but like I'm not sure if she is the one or if he is the one. Here, I've got a great tool for this, okay? So if you want to find out if your spouse actually is the one, like your soulmate, it is a fail-proof process. So if you're a note taker, you might write this down. Did she marry you? Did he marry you? Then they are the one. Okay, they solved it right there. That's all it takes. Because it's not built on like chemistry, and it's not built on like, man, does she still have the spark, and does the relationship, is it just easy and natural and right? Like, no, it is something entirely different. It is a covenant. It's a reflection of God's relationship with us. And the truth is, and as we'll talk about next week, every marriage, every relationship is gonna have those hard times and those moments where like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. But it doesn't mean it's time to quit. Now, obviously there are some situations, if there's abuse, come talk to me about that kind of stuff. Like, you gotta get out, we gotta get you to safety. I'm not talking about those types of things, but I'm saying like the run of the mill, like, man, we're having fights about money, we're having fights about parenting, we're having fights about career choices. That's not always the reason just to say, well, I'm packing up my bags and I'm going. That they are the one because God brought you together, and the fact that you're married is something special. And if it's a reflection of God's character, the fact that he loves us no matter what, and that even when I'm rebelling against him and I refuse to give him my love, he sticks with me, then our marriages should look the same, because the same way that Christ gave up his life and died for his bride is the way that we're to live as well. And so this is something I'm calling Christians to do, okay? If you're not a follower of Jesus, you're off the hook on a lot of this, but if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, we're called to something different. It's supposed to look different. And so your role today is to go home, and you might need to have an uncomfortable conversation about where are we in this relationship? Where are we in our marriage? And the thing is, like, you've told yourself that peace is the ultimate purpose of your marriage. No, it's not. That's a ceasefire. Sometimes you have to break the bone again so you can set it correctly, which means that there's gonna be some friction, there's gonna be some moments where it's a little uncomfortable. But don't you think that low-level frustration and dissatisfaction that's like been running underneath the surface for the last several years, don't you think it's enough to do something about it? Like, don't you think it's enough to like get out of that cycle of just being so frustrated with the person that you've spent your life with? Because here's what I want you to know. You actually have the possibility of an incredible life in front of you. That your marriage can go from a C to an A. Your marriage can go from an F to a C. And like, you can get to the place where like things are awesome between you, but it's not gonna happen through just sitting back and like, well, I don't wanna ruffle feathers. I don't wanna upset the apple cart. No, sometimes you need to say, no, we're called to oneness, and we have to do something. And so, if you're a married couple and you would like this, I have a tool. It's 15 questions to help evaluate your marriage. It's supposed to be done together, like you don't do it on your own. But that just, if you need a place to start, and if you'd like that set of questions, just write that on your connection card. That maybe your marriage is at an 8, but you're like, how do I get it to a 10? Maybe your marriage is at a 2, and you're like, how can I get it to a 5? This is just one of those easy ways to start conversation, because God ultimately wants to bring some oneness to your heart. And so I want to pray. I want to take a moment where we have some self-reflection. And I want to pray for a lot of things. I want to pray for the married person who just feels like they're stuck in a loveless relationship. I want to pray for the single person who needs the courage to break up with the person they just know that they shouldn't be with. Or I want to pray for the single person who's like, I desperately want to find the one, but I don't want to settle. I want to pray that God would give you the patience for the season that you're in, but also that he would reveal the person that he wants you to spend your life with. But I also want to pray for the people that need to experience the ultimate transformation, to be the bride of Christ, to go from living in this ambiguity of I don't know where I stand with God to being rock solid, sure, I know where I stand with God. So if you would, join me in prayer. God, right now, I want to pray for my married friends in the room. The ones who feel like their marriage could not get any worse. I want to pray for those who feel like my marriage isn't bad, but it's not good. The God, that you would create the openings for conversation, that you would give the courage to say something even though it's difficult and it's not easy. The God, that you would actually bring oneness into these marriages. God, the same way that you laid your life down for your bride, I pray that we would have the courage to lay our lives down for our husbands or wives as well. And the God, that you would restore something that we might believe is just completely lost. The God, that there would be so much joy, that there would be so much expectation and excitement within the relationship, within the marriage, that it spills into every other area of their life. God, I pray for my single friends who are in the room, who desperately want to be married, but just can't seem to find the right person. The God, that you would give them patience right now, that they wouldn't lower their standards just to scratch the itch, that they would rather wait for the right person. And the God, in time, you would bring somebody who loves you, somebody that has the right character, somebody who has the right chemistry, and the God, that you would be able to unify that person with this other person in a covenant marriage. But God, I also pray for the single people who are like, man, I'm in a relationship right now that I really shouldn't be. It doesn't have a trajectory. There's no clarity. I'm not sure where it's going. I don't think the other person does either. And the God, that you would either clarify it, that there would be a DTR that just explains where it needs to go, or God, you would give one of them the courage to say, maybe we should end this. But God, I'm also praying right now for the person in this room who needs a relationship with you. That God, they've been trying to do life on their own, and that just apart from relationships, apart from marriage and covenant and all those different things, that God, they just know they need a relationship with you, God. That they've been trying to satisfy the requirements of being right in your eyes by themselves, and that God, that you would tell them to stop, that you have chosen them, that you have picked them, that you want to be in a relationship with them. And God, I'm just praying that you would put this prayer on their lips and in their heart of, God, I need you, that I am somebody who screws up over and over and over, and that I don't have what it takes to be enough. But God, I know you do. So God, I'm praying that you would save me, the God, that you would forgive me of my sin, you would take full control of my life, that you would take me from death to life, that you would take me from darkness to light, the God, that you would be my Lord and my Savior, that you would be the person who calls the shots in my life. And so Lord, I pray this in faith, believing that you will save me. Amen.